What you're viewing right now is an interactive video that was developed by the NJTC with one of its training partners, Salisbury by Honeywell. We put this together following some of the best practices, the OSHA T&D partnership best practices in mind, to make sure that we had a great training tool for individuals that were going to go out and install cover-up or protective devices on the lines.
Welcome to our virtual training on effective cover-up and approach zones. We encourage employees to work safely and to protect themselves and their coworkers so that at the end of the day, everyone goes home in the same physical condition that they came to work in. As journeyman linemen working on energized conductors, your lives largely depends on using rubber protective equipment, or cover-up, correctly when working within approach zones.
This interactive video has 46 slides, and it also has a part where the student will go through and apply the cover-up after they've learned how to go through and apply the cover-up and what goes where. And then they'll also have a quiz at the end of it, a 10-question quiz that they have to take to see if they retained any of the knowledge. I'm going to go through a few of the slides here to begin with and let you see how the program flows and how some of the training takes place. And again, the student can fast forward, he can go back and forth when they're viewing this. All of these interactive videos can be viewed by the student at home as part of their workbook lessons. They're strictly optional, but they're a great training aid for those individuals that want to go through and really get a better grasp of what the material is. So I'm going to go through, as I mentioned, and play a few of these, and I'm going to jump ahead and take you up to the section where we actually have to go through and do the interactive part. So let's get started here.
IPE, insulated protective equipment, and PPE, personal protective equipment, are terms that represent rubber gloves and sleeves, line hoses, insulating blankets, insulator hoods, rigid guards, arm guards, and many other protective covers which we use on a daily basis. Many serious and fatal injuries can be attributed to a failure to use rubber protective equipment as required.
Again, the student's being exposed to what the equipment is, what each item is.
Protection against electrical shock, and guards the worker against an accidental contact. Work performed on energized lines involves hazards which require an understanding of the rules and procedures and an understanding of specific equipment. Skilled journeyman linemen use cover-up to avoid contacting something they didn't intend to contact.
This particular slide is very powerful. It shows exactly what can happen when you're not paying attention, or the situation that you can run into out on the job site if you don't have the cover-up on.
Energized work must be done on as small an exposed area as possible. When working around energized facilities, work can only be performed when those facilities are correctly covered up. So let's get started. During this training, we are going to cover the following. First, we are going to discuss approach zones and how they are defined. We will also cover some safety rules that apply to cover-up and the intent of the rules. Then we are going to identify different methods of worker protection known as rubber protective equipment. We will also show you several examples of different job tasks and the cover-up that was applied on those jobs, followed by several interactive job scenarios in which you will have the opportunity to apply the cover-up and demonstrate your cover-up skills. Finally, we will complete your training by answering a number of test questions over the material that you have covered.
These interactive videos are available to all the apprentices as they go through their training program. And we are also setting it up into a situation where journeyman training can be done. So if you need to bring a group of journeymen in for refresher training, or just an individual, they can go through and watch the slides as they go through and then get to the interactive part and take the exam to hopefully refresh them.
MAD, minimum approach distances. Let's begin by taking a look at what OSHA states regarding minimum approach distances. OSHA 1910.269 states that the employer shall ensure that no employee approaches or takes any conductive object closer to exposed energized parts than set forth in Table R6 through Table R10 unless the employee is insulated from the energized part, or the energized part is insulated from the employee from any other conductive object at a different potential. Simply translated, minimum approach distance is the distance that a qualified worker is permitted to approach an energized object. Workers may not reach or take any conductive object closer than the minimum approach distance to an exposed energized part, unless the worker is insulated from the energized part. The minimum approach distance surrounds the energized part in all directions.
As you can see from this interactive video, they're hitting several of the senses. Not only does the student hear it, but they also have pictures where they can view it, which will help on the retention of the learning. And you can see that when you get into different scenarios, there's different work zones that you need to avoid. We've got several other slides that are like that.
Insulating gloves and sleeves provide the means to insulate a worker and allow you to be closer than minimum approach to the part needing to be worked on, thereby permitting work to be performed. For example, a 15,000-volt phase-to-phase line is subject to a minimum approach distance of 2 feet 2 inches. If you were required to keep your body that far away from an energized conductor, you would barely be able to reach it, much less perform any work. This may seem contradictory until you consider the makeup of minimum approach. Minimum approach distances are comprised of an electrical component and an ergonomic component. The electrical component is that distance beyond which an electrical flashover is unlikely to occur, even under the most extreme system overvoltages. The ergonomic component is added to the electrical component to allow for human reaction time if a decision is made to stop the approach to the energized part. The ergonomic component is the individual reach based on any body part, including legs and arms extended in any direction, or any uninsulated tool or material being used by a worker. The electrical component is separated into 3 distances: 26 inches for primary under 15,000 volts, 31 inches for primary between 15,000 volts to 25,000 volts, and 12 inches for secondary. When we add the ergonomic and electrical components together, we get a primary approach zone and a secondary approach zone. The primary approach zone is reach plus 26 inches or 31 inches, and the secondary approach zone is reach plus 12 inches.
Yes, after viewing this slide, this really lays it out for the apprentice or the journeyman. They should have a really good understanding now. Not only has it been explained to them, but it's also been shown in this really great graphic that's on the screen.
The majority of contact accidents involve contact not with the part being worked on, but contact with other conductors, a condition that can be prevented through the proper use of cover-up equipment. So what does that mean to you as a journeyman lineman and how you perform your daily work when working around energized conductors? There is a simple way to consider the minimum approach distance. If a worker can reach into or take any conductive object into an area that will be within minimum approach of any energized equipment, then that worker shall be protected with PPE rated for the appropriate voltage before entering the area. Once properly protected with PPE, the worker can move into the area to apply rubber protective equipment, again, rated for the appropriate voltage to protect against accidental contact.
I am going to go ahead here, several slides, just to show you some of the best practices here.
Now let's look at the same job, but this time the worker has installed his cover-up to provide adequate protection for himself according to the safety rules. Notice that the worker has installed not only rubber line hoses on the phase he is working on, but he has also placed another layer of protection on the cross arm in the event one of the protective components fails. Also notice that the worker has properly covered the energized phase that is directly below him, since it is within minimum approach. In this example, the worker has clearly provided himself a safer working environment and has reduced his chances of making an accidental contact.
Notice there are several examples here using different equipment.
Now let's move on and let you demonstrate the skills that you have learned through this training. The following 3 examples are going to show you 3 different jobs. We will give you a description of each job, and it will be your responsibility to effectively apply cover-up in each scenario. So let's get started. The first job is to replace a broken tie wire on the center phase of a three-phase line. The bucket truck is positioned on the neutral side of the structure and will have to be worked on from the side opposite of the crossarm. Apply your cover-up accordingly. To apply cover-up, drag and drop the icons from the top right to a desired location on the pole or conductors. You must apply them in the correct sequence. Once a cover-up item is applied, you will get immediate feedback that tells you whether you've done it right or not. On the top right is a progress bar that helps you keep track of your progress in this exercise. Once you complete an exercise, you will be notified.
Okay, now the student has been exposed to the correct way to apply the cover-up in several different scenarios. Now they're going to be asked to go through and apply the cover-up in the proper order. If they don't, they'll get a red X. So they're going to go through and put the cover-up on, and once they've got it all on for this particular scenario, then they'll have the toolbar right down below here, or progress bar, will be fully green, and they'll know that they have done it the correct way. Well, here we go. We're going to start off and find out which of these items go where. And if we paid attention, it did tell us that we start at the bottom and work our way to the top and inside out. Good so far. Well, that didn't work. That must be right. Uh-oh, there's a red X. Why was that? Because I didn't go inside out. I was out there too far. I need to be to the line. Close. There we go. Does that work? I don't think that goes there, but I bet this does. Nope, not there. So we don't need the outside lines. We need to get the inside done first. So this particular exercise is done. So we hit next, and there are two more exercises for the student to complete. Two different scenarios, two more different scenarios that will allow them to test their knowledge. Then, after they've completed the cover-up applications, there's a quiz, a 10-question quiz. And I'm going to go through here quickly, and let's just see what happens if I hit A, and I'm not going to read these real quick, but I'm going to go through and just answer a few of these. And all these questions were developed around the previous slide, so the student should have an idea of what they should go. Uh-oh, well, I got a 60%. Again, not quite good enough. It's telling me I need to go back and maybe read the questions this time and do a little bit better job. So I'm going to sit here and it says try again, and it brings me right back to number 1. So the student can go back, and again, this doesn't count against them on their grade in their workbooks. It's just a great learning exercise for the student.